we got Kevin, who wants to talk to us from New Mexico. Kevin, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call.
Of course. What'd you want to talk to us about?
Yeah, so I know you guys, especially on the Friday show, talk about conspiracies. People bring some pretty crazy ones nowadays. This really prominent flat Earth thing
Certainly do.
Comes up.
Mm-hmm.
People like you guys and me, we wonder what would be the motivation for tens of millions of scientists and governments for centuries trying to pull off this kind of a huge conspiracy. It just seems so absurd. And that doesn't seem to get a lot of traction with these folks. But what about the potential of religion being a conspiracy? Because religion really has in the past had a strong foothold in governments, and people nowadays are trying to get their religions implanted in our government, as deeply as they can. That seems like a really good potential for an investigation of a conspiracy if the conspiracy theorists are really serious about this stuff. What do you think?
You're totally right about this. Kevin can really speak to this. Kevin, you take this first.
Yeah. I mean, it's even where do you even start this one? So, I mean, what we really see happening with religion coming in is it's really every single layer. And we sort of mentioned Project 2025, and that is the conservative plan to take over the federal government, get rid of lots of the regulation and departments so that's we don't have Overwatch, and then really change everything to platform Christianity moving forward. And it's interesting that there are obviously super wealthy people who are funding this. You've got conservative politicians who probably don't believe that this is the best thing for the United States, but are going to actively push this. Then you also have the people who are voting this in, or vote for these individuals to put them sort of in the office, when the reality is most of these things will financially, service-wise, damage them as well. So I think when you look at the sort of cognitive dissonance that allows this to happen on such a large scale level, it's sort of a bit mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think a big reason why you don't see that same level of skepticism is because as Christians in particular, you are taught a victim narrative. Like you are taught that the world is kind of out to get you and that they're going to be, saying things about you, or you're going to be the weird kid in the classroom that still believes in God, even though all of the other kids in the classroom probably also believe in God. There's a real narrative of persecution that Christians pretend like is happening. And I was a believer of this too. I really thought, I'm a minority in the world for having the beliefs that I do. Yes, like they're broadly speaking, obviously like media in general has gotten to display more points of view and more representation from non-Christian communities. And so Christians see that as an attack. But if you're looking at like actual government, right, if you're looking at a lot of legislation, that is not the case. We are seeing tons of lobbying interests for Christian nationalist, interests, right? And when Kevin's talking about like Project 2025, that's not a conspiracy. That's like on paper. That's like, this is their legit agenda. Like you can go look it up. Like they have that publicly stated. With a lot of conspiracy stuff, it's always, strange, like unstated principles about things, right? It's always like some other master secret thing going on. QAnon was, when in its biggest height, was really crazy about this, right? They're talking about like kids being in underground bunkers and using their blood to fuel the rich via adrenochrome to keep them young, right? Like, I mean, it was like real out there stuff. Meanwhile, we are seeing like an active erosion of rights and principles just by like really weird wedge issues, like the woke debate in schools, right? This is like a thing that's coming up because traditionally conservative folks are using it as a ploy to get their own agendas put in schools, right? So it is really fascinating to see, like, yeah, how come the same skeptical audience doesn't talk about that. And I think part of it is, yeah, just that victim narrative that Christians really give themselves as far as their relationship with the rest of the world. But anyway, that's a lot of talking for me. What do you think about that?
Well, what I had been thinking about is if you think way back to when a conspiracy like flat Earth or the science is all banding together to fool all the population of the planet, decades and centuries ago. What if decades and centuries ago religious leaders said, you know something, we know that there's really no God, but we figured out a way to get people to give us power, and so that actually would be a conspiracy. The conspirators who would start this, the science is in this direction. They would know that they're fooling people. That's why it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
They designed a conspiracy, and what if religious people thought, hey, we know how to get power. We can get, what we want. We can get people to do what we want them to do. We can even figure out how to enslave other people to do our work for us based on our religion. And somehow people seem to believe us when we tell them these stories. So let's just keep it going. I mean, it's as legitimate as these other broad conspiracy theories that we hear about.
Yeah. To be fair, there is a culture of that kind of thinking against the Catholic Church, and is like kind of prevalent among some Protestant Christians. There's definitely a lot of Christians that think like the Pope is like the Antichrist or whatever, right? Or, there's stuff like that happening. But yeah, it is kind of interesting that you don't hear that being the more common thing.
If you go back to look at Incan civilization, and when the way that the cities were designed and the temples were designed, they were at specific angles so that and the leaders who were talking to God would first work with the architects and the people who were and the astronomers who were looking at the stars. And so they're like, well, if you're building a new temple, build it here. And build this wall at this angle, because on this day, the sun's going to hit it and it's going to light up red. And they would then, the astronomers would come and say, hey, in 2 days, you probably want to be talking to God and have him give you the sign, because that side of that temple is going to light up red. So this is leaders using religion and working with scientists to have this conspiracy to promote the leader's divineness and their relationship with a God they know had nothing to do with God.
Yeah, it's true.
What's really interesting about that is that nowadays it's the real scientists who can tell you when the eclipse is going to happen, like to the second, based on where you're standing on the planet. And yet they're not the ones who are pushing religion, and the people who are pushing something like flat Earth, they can't make any predictions, but they're the ones who are saying the scientists are involved in the conspiracy. It's just so backwards, which obviously we already know that, but
they come afterwards and say that, it's because God was angry about the gays, or God was angry about trans rights, or God was angry about whatever. So they just flip it around and use it later.
Yeah.
True.
That's easy to do it that way.
Yeah, there's so much to be said about this particular topic, because you can just get lost in like a lot of rabbit holes when talking about this. Okay, so like for example, right, the Freemason movement, like a lot of people don't realize how far back, first of all, Freemasonry goes, but secondly, Freemasonry conspiracies go. That shit was around since the very beginning. Like there was a time in this country where your active identification, whether you were anti or pro secret organizations, like mattered as to whether somebody would vote for you. People really used to be up in arms about these kinds of things. And I don't know, it just kind of ebbs and flows. Like, I mean, obviously recently it's the QAnon stuff, right? It's like, I don't know. There's always going to be an element of society, it feels like, that is really just going to push for some sort of secret organization doing stuff. And it's never the stuff that's like already in front of us. It just doesn't seem to line up. I don't know. Something about human beings that really think that way,
Well, there's that groupthink for people who are who are willing to believe in their God claims without sufficient evidence that somebody like me requires, they also think that other people don't need evidence. And so they just think that, hey, if it seems like something to complain about and to turn into a conspiracy, conspiracy theory to spread, well, then we might as well just call it a conspiracy because everybody's out there not requiring evidence just like us. But that doesn't work for me. It simply never has. Even when I was, a kid going to church, it didn't work for me. So
yeah. And of course, I say this all the time. Conspiracies have happened, do happen, and will continue to happen on multiple levels, right? Not just big stuff, small stuff too. It happens. That's, court cases reveal this kind of stuff all the time. It's just like the reason why we know about it is because like it does tend to go through a court of law, or if it doesn't, like there is other evidence that journalists can uncover, or real sources of information can describe real events that have happened, and again, not like children underground in bunkers or whatever, so yeah, I wish we could kind of show that to people, but hey, that's why this show exists. At least I try. Gosh knows I try. But anyway, I think Kevin, we'll go ahead and let you go unless you had any other thoughts or questions you want to give us.